All right, welcome to Bridgetown Church of Christ. My name's Eric. If you've not met me before, I'm one of the ministers here. I'm part of the teaching team. And I was just wondering if you would bear with me for just a second so that I could show off for you. Is that all right? Can I show you something cool that I can do? All right, I've got my guitar here, and I'm going to show you one of the first things I learned on the guitar. Are you ready for it? Okay, here we go. There we go. Sorry about that. That right there, that feels uncomfortable, right? That's something that we call dissonance. That note isn't a part of the key, and so we feel the dissonance in our bones, and we're like, I don't like that. We want it to resolve. It creates tension within us, and we want it to resolve somehow. We want it to go back to the key that we established. That's kind of music 101, right? There's dissonance sometimes in music. And there's dissonance sometimes in our lives. We see something or we read something and it feels like this tension within us, and we have to resolve it somehow. And so this is why there's lots and lots of websites that they're just all about fueling rage and clickbait and all of that kind of stuff. I happened upon one of those websites. It's called Preachers and Sneakers. Preachers and Sneakers. And the whole idea is this guy takes these pictures of these preachers, and then he zooms in on their feet. I know it sounds weird. He looks at the sneakers that they have on, and then looks at how much they cost. So just in case you were wondering how much my shoes cost, they were like $50 on Amazon. I bought the laces separately. They were $3. So that's where I'm at. But let me just show you a couple of these pictures. So the first one here is a guy named Pastor Kian. If you look down here, it's $980 for those sneakers. $908, like $1,000 for sneakers. And you read through the comments, and there's things like this: ridiculous. One of the many reasons I avoid organizations called church now. It feels weird that these preachers would be wearing $980 sneakers, right? So we go ahead and go to the next one. This one is T.D. Jakes. There we go. And his sneakers cost $770, right? And one of the comments there is, for me, if you're preaching from the pulpit laced up like that and someone in your congregation is struggling financially, even just one, then you're worrying about the wrong things. Right? It feels like dissonance to us, right? Let's keep going. Stephen Furtick. If you zoom in on his shoes, they're these ones here. They're not that expensive, but I couldn't pass up this comment. Not because it really makes my point, but just those look like the no-slip shoes that the guy at the Cheesecake Factory wears. That was my favorite comment. Because they do, right? But this feels weird to us, that these preachers would be wearing these kinds of sneakers. It feels like dissonance, right? But then I happened upon another Instagram post that was talking about Taylor Swift and her $6,000 boots that she wore for her Eras tour. And I see comments like, such a class act. Totally different response, right? That doesn't feel like dissonance to us. That just makes sense. Okay, she's Taylor Swift. She's got billions of dollars, right? She's gonna, get the most sparkly and fancy boots she can for her tour, right? I think the reason that the reactions to those two different genres of shoes, I don't know what to say, the reason we have that reaction, that visceral reaction, is because it speaks to consistency. It speaks to integrity. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, is we're going to be talking about integrity. And when I started studying for this sermon, I kind of had an idea of what integrity meant. But I think that it's changed for me. I think I've come across something that defines integrity a little bit better than I defined it before in my own head. Okay, so if you would, go ahead and turn to page 78 in your Mark journals. If you don't have one, there's some in the back. You can take one, keep it. It's yours forever. You can read it over and over and over again. But go ahead and pull out your Mark journals, and we're going to draw a picture, okay? And this one's pretty simple, okay? You're going to draw two circles. We can, yeah. Oh, there we go. There we go. So we're going to draw two circles, but make them big enough because you're going to write three things in each circle, okay? You're going to write three things in each circle. So what I want you to do is I want you to label one of them attitudes, okay? And then label the other actions, okay? And when I say attitudes, I mean some specific things, okay? So in the attitudes circle, I want you to write paradigms, that's P-A-R-D-I-G-M-S. No clue why there's a G in that word, but there is. Paradigms, so that's like your worldview, how you view everything that's around you, okay? And then you want to write purpose. That's how you view your purpose in the world, what you're here for, where you stand on the hierarchy of everything. So paradigms, purpose, and priorities. Paradigms, purpose, and priorities. So your attitudes are how you view the world, how you view yourself, and how you rank things. What is valuable to you and what is not valuable to you. Okay? Now actions are what you do with these three things. Time, talents, and treasure. Okay? Time, talents, and treasure. And so I think that most of the time what we think integrity is when our attitudes, the way we view the world, the way we view ourselves, the way we rank things, when our attitudes line up with our actions, what we do with our time and talents and treasure. That's what we think that integrity means, but I think that that doesn't quite capture what integrity actually is. Because in reality, our actions and our attitudes normally align themselves. They align themselves for us, right? Because when we feel dissonance, when we feel something that doesn't seem to belong, we want to resolve that tension and we want to make it right again, right? When we hear that nasty note that doesn't fit in the key, we want to resolve it to the note that does. When we feel dissonance, it's uncomfortable. We don't like it. And so a lot of times what happens, we do something that maybe goes against our attitudes, the way we view the world, the way that we view ourselves in the world, the way we prioritize things. And what we do instead of changing what we're doing is we rationalize it away, right? So we resolve the tension by moving our attitudes closer to our actions. Does that make sense? We resolve the tension, we resolve the dissonance that way. I go on these YouTube binges of Norm Macdonald clips over and over and over again. I love to listen to Norm Macdonald. He's just hilarious to me. But one of the things I saw not too long ago, he was talking to a talk show host about how he quit smoking. And the talk show host was like, wow, that's great. How'd you do that? He's like, well, I read the side of the thing, and did you know those things can kill you? Well, yes, everybody knows that those things can kill you, but what happens is our attitude shifts and we rationalize our behavior so that we can resolve the tension, right? But then our attitudes line up with the idea that we're going to go ahead and keep smoking. It's not that bad, right? And so our dissonance causes us to try to resolve the tension that lies within us, but most of the time that means that we rationalize our behavior. And so integrity is not when our actions align with our attitudes, because that just naturally happens. Like a murderer thinks that what they're doing is okay. Their attitude, their worldview, their purpose, their priorities say what you're doing, killing people, is all right. Right? And so, but that person doesn't have integrity just because their actions and their attitudes line up. And so the question is, well, what is integrity then? And I think this is closer to the truth. Integrity is actually when our attitudes align with the truth. When what we believe aligns with what is true. And then our intentional actions align with those attitudes. I say intentional actions because we always can make mistakes. Like, we can always do things a different way than we want to, or than we believe we should. And so our intentional actions align with our attitudes that are aligned with the truth. And so that's an easy little definition there, but it's not easy to do, right? How do you shift what you think, what you believe, to reflect the truth? How do you do that? How do you find the truth? How do we align our attitudes to that truth? And then how do we take intentional action from those attitudes? Those are good questions, which is why I'm glad that we have Jesus to tell us the answers to these things, or at least to show us how to process these things. And so we're going to be in Mark chapter 12 today, and we're going to start in verse 35. We read kind of the last part of this story earlier, but we're gonna kind of back it up, and we're gonna see three different things that Jesus does in this passage to show us how we do this. How do we align our attitudes with the truth? How do we align our actions with those attitudes? Okay, so chapter 12, verse 35. Later, as Jesus was teaching the people in the temple, he asked, "Why do the teachers of religious law claim that the Messiah is the son of David? For David himself, speaking under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, said, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit in the place of honor at my right hand until I humble your enemies beneath your feet.' And since David himself called the Messiah my Lord, how can the Messiah be his son?" And the large crowd listened to him with great delight. So this passage comes right after Jesus has been questioned over and over again in the temple by the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the scribes. And they kind of gave up. They asked him so many questions that they didn't have any more questions to ask him, and he was just blowing them out of the water, and so they just kind of stopped, and they're afraid to ask him any more questions. And Jesus steps in and he's like, "Well, I'm going to ask you a question. You've asked me so many questions. Let me ask you a question. How could David say, the Lord said to my Lord? How could David call the Messiah his Lord if he's David's descendant?" And this doesn't really make sense to us, but think of it this way, okay? A king wouldn't call his junior a senior, okay? A king wouldn't say, "My descendant is better than me," but that's exactly what David is saying. And so Jesus' question, he's talking to the scribes and he's saying, "Listen, you keep saying the Messiah is going to be the son of David. But how could he be the son of David if David says he's better than him?" And the point isn't that Jesus is saying he's not the son of David. The point is not saying that. The point is he's not just a son of David. So the son of David would be the king. And Jesus isn't just a king in the way that they would understand the Messiah to be. He's not just a king. Now, Messiah means the anointed one. Christ means the anointed one. And there's several different kinds of people that are anointed. A king is one of them. Jesus is saying, "I'm not just a king." But he's also saying, I'm not just a prophet, which is another person that would be anointed in the Old Testament. I'm not just a priest. I'm more than that. I am the Son of God, right? I have authority, which Mike talked about last week. I have authority because I am the one who created truth. I am the one who created everything. And this changes, this is supposed to change the scribes' worldview, their paradigm, how they process the world, how they process truth, what is right and what is wrong, right? He says, listen, it's not about being the king, it's about something much greater than that. And a guy named James Brooks, who wrote a commentary on Mark, says this: the passage should force the modern church to reconsider the way in which Jesus is king and the way in which God puts enemies under his feet. The Jesus of Mark is a servant and a minister, not a militant and triumphant king. This concept of Jesus himself and of the Christian ministry needs to be recovered. And so Jesus is attacking the attitudes of the scribes. He's saying, your worldview is based on your conjecture, it's based on a bunch of other things, but it needs to be based on the truth. He's attacking their worldview, and he's saying, look, I am the truth. Jesus, in other passages, says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And so our attitudes need to reflect that. Our paradigm needs to be based on the fact that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. So let's keep reading verse 38. Jesus also taught, beware of the teachers of religious law, for they like to parade around in flowing robes, expensive shoes, and receive respectful greetings as they walk in the marketplaces. And how they love the seats of honor in the synagogues and the head table at banquets, yet they shamelessly cheat widows out of their property and pretend to be pious by making long prayers in public. And because of this, they will be more severely punished. Now this one gets me because I'm the one that has the special seat, right? Like the scribes, they would sit in the front of the temple and see all of the people, right? That's my seat right now. And so I need to be careful of where I view my purpose, where I view my place in this whole thing, right? It's not about personal gain. It's not about popularity. It's not about people saying nice things to you. It's about loving God and loving other people. And so Jesus attacks their worldview, and then here he's attacking their pride, their purpose, what they view themselves as. Their purpose isn't to walk around in flowing robes and expensive shoes. Their purpose is to serve God's people, and they're missing that, right? And so Jesus points to their actions, and he says, look, these are signs of an attitude that is off kilter, that's off base, right? These are people that are lauded for their spirituality because of their job title. Like, I don't know if any of you know this, but one of the hardest things to do as a minister is when somebody is like, hey, what do you do for a living? And this is why. Because as soon as you say minister, you see it in their eyes. They go back over their conversation and did I say anything sinful? Did I curse? Did I say anything against Jesus? What am I going to do here? And inevitably, the response that they give you is this. They're like, oh, that's great. That's great. And they had just told you that, they hate the church and they hate everything that the church does, whatever. And you're like, oh, yeah, thanks. Why do you think that's great? Okay, cool. But there's a respect that comes with this position that as a minister, I have to fight against. I have to fight against my pride in this position, right? Because there's 200 people in this room, and probably 20 of you are listening to me, right? But that's 20 people that I have their ear, right? Right? And so I have to fight against that, and I need to place my purpose firmly within what Jesus says it's about. It's about loving God. It's about loving people, right? We'll go on and read the story of the widow. Jesus sat down near the collection box in the temple and watched as the crowds dropped in their money. Many rich people put in large amounts. Then a poor widow came and dropped in 2 small coins. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I tell you the truth. This poor widow has given more than all the others who are making contributions, for they gave a tiny part of their surplus. But she, poor as she is, has given everything she had to live on. All she had. She laid it before God. A lot of times in our English translations, one of the things that they do is they'll say the 2 coins add up to a penny, right? Because that's part of the original text, is that the 2 coins add up to a very small coin. But I think that what we think when we hear that is, oh, she gave a penny. But I want you to notice she gave 2 coins. She had 2 coins to live on. If I had 2 coins to live on, and I wanted to give something to God, I'd probably give just 1, right? I'd probably just go 50% is enough, right? We talk about tithing 10%. 50% is a lot more than 10%. So this is a good gift, right? 50%. But she had 2 coins, and she gave both. She gave both, all that she had to live on. A guy named James Edwards said, the widow's giving all she had is a true fulfillment of the call to discipleship, to follow Jesus by losing one's life. The final Greek words of the chapter might be paraphrased. She lay down her whole life. And that is what Jesus will do on Golgotha. That's what Jesus is going to do. See, Jesus attacks their worldview. He attacks their purpose. And then he attacks their priorities. He says, what's worth more? This widow's penny? This widow's 2 coins? Or what these people gave out of their abundance? He says, this. Because she gave everything she had. She gave all she had to live on for God. And that action speaks something about her attitudes. It reminds me of this story that I read not too long ago. I was reading a devotional, and it talked about a guy named Polycarp. Polycarp was a disciple of John the Apostle. And when he was about 86 years old, the Roman authorities caught him and brought him into the arena, and the Roman proconsul said, hey, you need to disassociate yourself with the Christians. You need to completely abandon Jesus and claim Caesar as your king. And Polycarp, 86 years old, is like, I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. I can't deny my king that has saved me. I can't do that. And the proconsul said, okay, well, we're going to send in some wild beasts. We're going to send in some wild beasts. They're going to tear you apart, eat you alive. Polycarp says, okay, all right. And the proconsul gets mad, and he's like, no. If the wild beasts don't scare you, I'm gonna burn you alive. That's what I'm gonna do. Kind of reminds me of the scene in Pee-wee Herman's Big Adventure where they're like, we're gonna burn him and then hang him and then kill him. Anyways, so he's like, no. If the wild beasts don't scare you, we're gonna set you on fire. And Polycarp, his answer is, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? I'm not going to give up Jesus. He is the truth. He is everything to me. He's saved me. How could I give him up? He is the way, the truth, and the life. He is the one. He's the one that gives me purpose. He's the most important thing. Polycarp lays down his 2 coins. He lays down his attitudes and his actions, and he says, Jesus, you can have them. Because you're worth everything. I surrender it all to you. And that's what Jesus wants. He doesn't want our attitudes or our actions. He wants both coins. He wants both. And so how do we align our attitudes with the church, with the truth? And how do we align our actions with our attitudes? Well, what happens when we change one of them is it creates some dissonance within us. And we have to resolve that dissonance somehow, right? It feels uncomfortable when we change our mind about something and we're doing something that goes against that. And so we have to find a way to align our attitudes with the truth and align our actions with those attitudes. Jesus starts with our attitudes. He says, do you believe that I am the way, the truth, and the life? Do you believe that the most important thing is to love God and love other people? And do you believe that the first should be last and the last should be first? That the widow's 2 coins are more than what people gave out of their abundance? He starts with our attitudes. Because when we have the right attitudes, when our attitudes are based on the truth that Jesus is, we can trust him with our actions. We can trust him with what we do, with how much we give. And then we can obey. We can do what he wants us to do. Now, the tricky thing is, this doesn't look the same for every person. See, Jesus tells the rich young ruler, he says, sell everything you have, give to the poor. But he doesn't tell everybody. He tells some people to follow him. Some people, he says, go home. He tells some people to do this, and then he tells other people to do that. Like, it's not the same for every person. And so how do we know what we should do? It starts with your attitudes. Romans 12:2 says, do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Renew your mind based on the truth. Renew your attitudes based on the truth. And then what you're going to know is what God's will is. His good, pleasing, and perfect will for you. And so a lot of times what we say in the church is when we come to this passage, it has to do with giving money. And so we talk about giving money. And so I'm going to talk about giving money here for just a second. And what we usually say is, the widow gave everything she had, so give all of your money to the church, right? No. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that at all. Because it looks different for every person. We talk about tithing a lot in the church. Tithing is an Old Testament thing that they did, where they gave 10% of their income to the temple to set up the temple and to make it work and to make it run, to fuel the religious activity of the Israelites. But if you look at what the Israelites actually gave to the temple, with sacrifices and all of that kind of stuff, the festivals and all the things that they had to do, it was more close to like 30% of their income. They had to give 10% as a baseline, and then like on top of that, they had sacrifices and all of that kind of stuff that they had to do. And so it was more like 30%. But the point wasn't what you're giving. The point was what it's doing to you. Because everything you do does something to you, right? When you create a habit, when you create a routine, it does something to you. It makes you the kind of person that does that kind of thing. So if you make a habit of running every morning, you become a person that enjoys running. I don't run every morning. I don't enjoy running. But if I did, I would become a person that enjoys it. And I know that because I've met people who say that running is fun and they enjoy it. And that's just not my experience, right? The idea is this: the 10% or the 30% creates dissonance with your attitudes and your actions. Creates dissonance, and you have to resolve it somehow, right? And so the 10%, the 30%, the 1% leads to 100%. Where your attitudes are based on the truth of who Jesus is and not on the situation that you're in. And your actions can kind of move your attitudes closer to the truth. Leads to 100%. Where you lay down your whole life, both of your coins, to Jesus. Where you become a non-anxious presence in the face of adversity. Where you become a light to your neighbors, where you say, I trust Jesus with everything. Where you can stand with Polycarp and say, what are you waiting for? So originally I was going to kind of end this message with the question, well, is your attitude aligned with the truth? And then depending on the answer, I would say two different things or whatever. But really the answer is they're both the same thing. Are your attitudes aligned with the truth of who Jesus is? Are your paradigms, your worldviews, are they aligned with the truth that Jesus brings? Do you view your purpose as God's representative here on earth, to love God and love people? Do you view your priorities the way that Jesus views your priorities, where they're upside down from the way that the world sees them? But no matter what your answer is, I would suggest, whether you believe that or whether you don't, do something. Do something, right? And a lot of times we'll say, tithe. Like give 10% of your income to the church or whatever. But this church doesn't need you to tithe. I think that one of the things that we say a lot of times that kind of creates a misconception, a missed idea. We have this script that we do. And I'm sure if you've been around for a couple of weeks, you've heard this. Okay, so let me know if you've heard this or not. We're going to do this fun thing. Costs money. We can't do it without you, right? And that's true. I'm not saying that's not true. Like, we can't buy cereal if people don't give money, right? For the pajama jam that's coming up next week, right? And we're grateful that people have given to this place. We are. But here's the truth. God's going to do something in this community. God's going to do something here with or without you. With or without me, right? God's going to move, and he's inviting you to participate with him in what he's doing here in this community. He's inviting you to participate with him to love our community and invite them into a life-changing relationship with Jesus, because you know that with Jesus better is possible, but you could refuse to do that or you could do that. It's up to you. And when you do that, it helps you align with the truth so that you can become a person of integrity. So do something. For you, start where you're at, not where you want to be. For you, if you're not giving anything, maybe try to give 1%. If you're giving 10% and it's not creating dissonance within you, where you're saying, I don't know if I can give this 10%. If it's just kind of like, oh, that's just what we do. That's just kind of how we roll. Maybe try to give a little bit more. And it doesn't have to be here. It doesn't have to be here. Right? Maybe give 15%. If you got a hefty tax return that you weren't expecting, think about giving it away. Think about giving it away to somebody else that needs it. Maybe your neighbor needs some house repairs and you're like, I've got this money just fell into my lap. Here you go. I want to help you out. Or maybe you're giving and it creates a little bit of dissonance in you, but you need to serve. Like you're not doing anything in the church or outside of the church to serve other people. Your purpose, you're not fulfilling your purpose to be a light to the world. So how can you serve? You can go on our website and take the serving quiz. I kid you not, it takes less than 20 seconds to take that. So see what it says. It asks you about things that you're interested in, things that you're talented with, and then it kind of spits out an answer. Hey, this is a good place to start, to look into how you could serve in this place. Or maybe that just means, it's getting warmer out and you see your neighbor's lawn needs mowed and you just do it for them, right? The point isn't to do whatever it is here. The point is to do this so that people can experience the love of Jesus through you.